Okay, let's jump right in. One of the most massive and sudden financial maneuvers in recent crypto history just happened, and it absolutely proves that the supposedly ungovernable world of cryptocurrency is on a direct crash course with global geopolitics. The company behind Tether, which we all know is the world's largest stablecoin, executed a massive freeze of funds that literally sent shockwaves through decentralized finance. So in this explainer, we're going to unpack exactly what happened, the mechanics behind how it's even possible, and why this single event could completely redefine the future of digital money. $344 million. Just let that sink in for a second. In a single, highly coordinated move, Tether locked down this exact amount of USDT. Now, we aren't just talking about suspending a couple of bad actors here. This sum rivals the gross domestic product of some small nations. It's one of the largest actions of its kind ever executed, rendering those specific tokens completely 100% unusable overnight.
But here is the really fascinating paradox of the whole thing. Despite $344 million being a jaw-dropping amount of money for anyone, it represents merely 0.3% of Tether's massive circulating supply, which sits at over a staggering $100 billion. It's literally a tiny drop in a very, very large bucket. Yet it's the precedent that has the entire financial world buzzing right now. The fact that a centralized entity can freeze a nation-state level sum of money with the flip of a switch, well, that raises some profound questions for all of us.
Section 1. U.S. Economic Fury. Geopolitics at play. So, to really understand the context of this freeze, we have to look at what's called economic fury. This is a term often tossed around in policy circles to describe the relentless U.S. strategy of utilizing intense economic sanctions. And the specific goal here? Crippling the Iranian regime's access to global financial systems over its nuclear ambitions and other international disputes. Basically, the U.S. is using its enormous global financial weight to economically isolate Iran.
And this escalating blockade practically forced a massive pivot to crypto. Back in 2018, the U.S. withdrew from the JCPOA nuclear deal, which triggered severe sanctions. Soon after that, Iran was effectively severed from the SWIFT banking system. And that's the main artery for international money. Cut off from traditional banking, the Iranian government naturally sought workarounds. They even went as far as making Bitcoin mining a state-sanctioned activity just to fund imports. And in that environment, stablecoins like USDT became the perfect tool. They're pegged to the dollar, but they can be easily traded globally outside the banking system.
Moving on to Section 2. Freezing mechanics. How funds get locked.
Now, you might be wondering, if cryptocurrency was originally designed to completely bypass traditional gatekeepers, how did authorities actually lock this money down? It's a great question, and it exposes a massive misunderstanding about crypto. See, fully decentralized assets like Bitcoin are censorship-resistant. No single entity can freeze them. But centralized stablecoins like USDT, even though they run on decentralized blockchains, the issuing companies retain total control. They can, and honestly they must, comply with government demands. It's the ultimate paradox, using a decentralized network for a highly centralized asset. So how exactly does the trap close? Well, it's essentially a three-step process. First, specialized blockchain analytics firms like Chainalysis use incredibly sophisticated algorithms to trace transactions. If a wallet interacts with a sanctioned entity, boom, it gets flagged. Second, that intelligence is securely coordinated with U.S. agencies. And finally, Tether acts on that intel. They actually hard-code those specific wallet addresses into a blacklist embedded right in their smart contracts. Instantly, the funds are trapped in digital limbo. No way in, no way out. Section 3. Impact and fallout. Market and human costs. Look, a $344 million freeze doesn't just happen in a vacuum. The glaring takeaway for the wider market here is that stablecoins are incredibly vulnerable to geopolitics. High-profile freezes like this spook investors big time. It fuels intense debates about Tether's neutrality and, naturally, drives users toward alternatives they perceive as safer, like USDC, or truly decentralized options like DAI. More broadly, though, it signals the absolute end of crypto's Wild West era. Governments now possess the tools to police the digital space just as aggressively as they do Wall Street. But step back from the macroeconomics for a second, because there is a devastating human reality attached to all of this. In the past decade alone, the Iranian rial has lost over 90% of its value. When your national currency is in severe hyperinflation and you are cut off from global banking, cryptocurrencies aren't for speculative day trading, not at all. For everyday, ordinary Iranians, digital assets like USDT are a vital financial lifeline. They're used to store value, get paid for freelance work, or simply buy groceries.
And I think that's what makes this quote from the source material so incredibly poignant. Sanctions don't just hurt governments, they hurt people trying to survive. While the $344 million freeze almost certainly targeted high-level state actors, the chilling effect on the general population is undeniable. It really highlights a deep, unresolved tension we're facing. How do global powers crack down on illicit state activity without simultaneously destroying the absolute only remaining financial access for innocent civilians caught in the crossfire?
Section 4. The future of crypto. What comes next?
So, what should we take away from all this? Looking ahead, the regulatory landscape is shifting, and it's shifting fast. First off, Tether is actively pledging enhanced compliance and proactive monitoring. They're working with law enforcement to protect their operating status. Second, in a classic cat-and-mouse game, sanctioned nations will likely accelerate their use of privacy-focused coins like Monero or double down on their own state-backed digital currencies to evade detection. And finally, you can absolutely expect U.S. policymakers to use events exactly like this to push for much stricter global oversight of all stablecoin issuers.
So, I'm going to leave you with a final, provocative thought. Will Tether face a massive user backlash for bending to government compliance, effectively abandoning the decentralized ethos of crypto? Or is this simply the new normal for decentralized finance? As the technology matures, the battleground between absolute financial freedom and geopolitical control is only going to intensify. Thanks for hanging out for this explainer, and remember to always keep questioning how the systems around you actually work.